to have you. Nigerian telcos are reacting to the recently proposed 9% tax on communication services by the Senate. Now, the telecommunications company stated that the decision would only place more burden on Nigerians. Now, the new tax service, if a service rather is implemented, for instance, implies that for every 100 naira airtime you buy, you only have access to 91 naira. The higher you buy, the more tax you pay. This will apply to products differently. And joining me in the studio to discuss this is President, Association of Telecommunications Companies of Nigeria, ATCON, Olusola Teniola. Always a pleasure to have you. And good morning.
Good morning.
All right, let's take a look at this. Telco's complaints over the proposed 9% VAT by the Senate. What are the issues here?
Well, the issues are that the communication services tax that was introduced in 2016 by a number of members of House of Reps and senators in the Senate, National Assembly, had indicated that they will increase this tax, which we deem as multiple tax because there's already taxes applied to the services, and the services in question were voice, data, the internet access, and also pay TV.
Okay.
So there was really consultation done with the 8th National Assembly, our association plus ATCON and the National Association of Subscribers.
Indeed.
Had gone to Abuja to put our case forward. The 8th National Assembly had agreed that this would stifle the growth of ICT, which is a significant contributor to the GDP right now, and that it should be set aside. And for this now to come back, almost like through the back door, after the 8th Assembly is now being replaced with the 9th Assembly, it just shows you it smacks of some certain plans to try and further burden the issue, because now emphasis is being placed on the fact that it's not the service providers that will bear the brunt. It's actually the consumers. So we have a tax that really is not only given additional burden because it doesn't say it's going to replace the 5% VAT that's currently applied to communication services tax. It's actually going to add another 9%, which is actually 14%. So your figures are somewhat wrong or incorrect. It could actually be worse than that. So we really advocate that any taxes that should be applied should be widened and not sector-specific. This is a sector-specific tax that really impacts on the 173 million active subscribers that we have in the country to date. And it will also widen the gap in between those that can afford telecommunication services and those that can't. You know, as you know, there's been data that we have shared with the 8th National Assembly and the Senate Committee for Communications that there could be an additional 20 million Nigerians that will be impacted that won't be able to access the service. And obviously, those that are currently using services will use it far less because it's going to cost them much more. So the logic doesn't really stack up. You can't really copy a tax law that applies in one country and just basically cut and paste it into a country that has different underlying assumptions and a much wider economy that could be impacted by this introduction of this bill. So it's gone through first reading. Second reading, I think it might go through, but you know, there's definitely going to be a public hearing, and we're going to obviously fight this as much as we can.
So what are your plans by the association? Obviously, earlier you talked about engagement by them with the Senate over this, and of course, we now know exactly what happened. They still had their way, as it were. So were you expecting this proposal anytime soon, despite all of this?
No, not really. I think that at the 8th Assembly, we had based it on trust that the distinguished senators would keep their word, and it looks like they haven't kept their word. The senator that was behind the last bill, where it was set aside, is now the same senator who's bringing it up, and he's using it as an excuse to say that his constituents are complaining about the increase or the proposed increase from 5% VAT to 7.5%. Well, this is a 9% charge on a 5% that's already applied to these services.
Indeed.
So it's a huge delta on basically the people that he says are not going to be impacted. this will actually impact the constituents he's representing, because it will impact the poor, because the poor do use the phone, the mobile phone, to carry out businesses.
Indeed.
The everyday market person uses it to communicate, and it's changed the lives of Nigerians. So a lot of Nigerians cannot do without the phone being beside them. So there's a larger base that will be impacted rather than the current taxpayers. That represents 13 million out of the 70 million. So we say, you know, even if it does increase the VAT, which is on luxury items or consumed, the 13 million that are currently paying taxes should be increased. You know, let's say they give themselves a target of 50 million. You know, you don't really need to apply this very punitive and I think discriminate tax onto the wider population.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously there's a lot to talk about on this issue, and we haven't heard the last of this by a long chalk. Now, in terms of the current VAT being imposed in the industry, how would you, you know, rate it operational-wise for not only telcos, but the response you're getting from people themselves? And how long has it been in operation?
Well, 5% is VAT is not really a high level if you compare it to other countries around the world. But you have to look at the GDP and the unemployment rate that we are suffering, and also the propensity for consumers to purchase ordinary goods. You know, so the country is going through, well, it's just come out of recession, but you know, if we're not careful, we'll go back into recession. So there should be a need to focus on areas where they can either reduce the cost of governance, because it reflects the reduced income that they're getting from oil receipts, or bring in new income. I mean, I think that's the most obvious, is you've got to increase your revenue base. And that's the challenge that government has. Whereas in other countries, if you look at the unemployment rate, you look at the mixed economies that they have demonstrated, they don't have this risk on just one product to earn foreign income. So we've got to diversify the economy no matter what. Otherwise, we'll just keep coming to this issue. Oil receipts are down. We have an expenditure that's very high. Then you target the masses. This is a tax that targets the masses. So we really got to come together. There should be a wider consultation on this, because the impact is much greater than the senator realizes, or the Senate realizes.
Indeed.
And it's a consumer tax that really, if you hark back to when there was a threat of the data prices going up, there was a huge uproar, even in the National Assembly, where they should be shouting even louder than this, because that's even worse than that, that they tried to apply. So I think that if memory serves them well, they really need to do an impact analysis on this and see, look, is this really something we need to bring in right now at this time, at this point in the country? And widening the tax base is the most fairest and the most easiest, I think, for people to absorb, to repair the deficit that they have in their budget.
You're right, and this was the same Senate that rejected proposed tax, or rather VAT, by the federal government, and now this imposition. But be that as it may, let's take a look at other stakeholders in your sector. We're talking about you know, the financial services, the ICT, and of course startups. Are they also will be in the radar of this whole gambit of
most definitely
increase?
I mean, the focus on the communication services tax, because the percentage increase is massive. 9% just at once is just, I think, ludicrous, to be honest. There's other taxes they proposed. Online, I think there's an online VAT tax. So that's meant to come in 2020, and that's 5%. And there are other taxes that we've fought, like the cybercrime fund levy, that was at 0.005%. So there's these various forms of taxes that they're trying to impose on our industry. It's been treated like a cash cow, to be fair honest. I mean, you know, the oil and gas suffered the same fate. And what we advocate is that we really need to have taxes harmonized. It was meant to have been done under the last administration, and I will hope that we'll bring the attention of the Minister of Finance definitely to really look at this, because we're suffering 39 taxes at the moment. So if you add those that are trying to do startups, and you know, they rely on communications, it's a big impact to their business, and it's definitely targeted against the youth, because it's the youth that can apply ICT to their future. So I think that this is a retrogressive tax, and it needs to obviously be quashed as soon as possible.
All right, very good. Now, when usually VAT increases are usually a sensitive issue when it comes to scenarios such as this, but are they guarantees to better services in businesses such as yours and even otherwise beyond?
Well, our business contributes 450 billion naira per year, and that's minimal because, as I said, I mentioned the multiple taxes, the rich lady. I don't think those get reported. So, 450 billion naira is a lot of money in any country. So we need to see those applied in a manner, if not back into the sector, to improve the coverage and the scope of telecom, so it reaches the unserved and underserved, because we do have 192 market gaps, which represents about 30 million Nigerians who are still yet to use a voice call, and to also make the services affordable. Affordability is the key thing. So instead of increasing prices, whether it's through taxes or any other cost increase, we need to be thinking of reducing the services to our citizens. So anything that really impinges that is something that we need to really address in a manner that all stakeholders, right from the financial services you mentioned, like when we're talking about mobile payments and things like that, this will be impacted, So, we're seeing conflicting policies coming out from this government. In one hand, they're seeking FDI. Right now, they're in Dubai right now, trying to encourage investments to come into the sector. And then on the other hand, the same government is now imposing taxes that eliminates the reason for why those investors will come in, because it's almost a form of upfront tax where it should be back-ended on the back of increased employment, because, with increased employment, you have the PAYE system that can actually improve the coffers of the government. So, yes, the financial sector will be impacted. It applies to them, the insurance, anyone who's doing electronic banking or anything electronic. And I think in this day of digital age, that's the way we're going. So, even the cashless policy that they have, this will have an impact, because there will be a charge deducted every time, So I think that there has to be a review as to what all these taxes are doing and what outcomes are we having from the taxes applied already or that have been collected. How is it improving our lives? Are there more schools? Are there more hospitals? There's just some basic questions that have to be asked. What are we doing with the taxes already collected? And what can we do to improve the cost of governance?
Indeed. All right, definitely. We're going to be seeing reverberating effect of this tax regime when imposed. And of course, that means your association will have to be doing a lot of monitoring as well, based on your last comments regarding this.
We hope it's if it's imposed.
All right. Okay, Olusola Teniola, President ATCON. Many thanks for your thoughts on this issue. Good to have you with us.
Most welcome.